in my career, there's been about 3 horses out of thousands that I went, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze. Imagine you put a human on top of her back. Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I want you to meet Sunday. This is a 7-year-old Paso, and in this video we're going to find out if she's trainable or not. Let's get started. So Sunday went through a training program for about 4 months. I don't have all the facts of it, but what I do know is that she wasn't really trained to ride by the end of that, and that's kind of the goal with her, because if she's here at the Horse Protection Association of Florida, and she was born here, and she doesn't seem to have any real obvious issues, and so we're going to kind of test things a little deeper with her and find out what's going on here, and see if we think she's trainable, and if it's worth investing more time and money into another training program. One of the things that I like to start with when I'm first handling them is connection. So I would stop, and see there she connected with me. She looked in at me. The first couple times that I stopped with her, and I just met this horse, first couple times I stopped, she kind of rolled past me. And so if they do that, that's my cue. Like, she's kind of doing it right there. She's kind of putting her ribs and hindquarters towards me. My guess would be that is a slightly defensive posture that she's taking. And so I'm just going to mess with me walking towards those hindquarters. There we go. And getting her to just kind of face up right there. So that's kind of how I like to introduce myself to them, is just letting them know that I like to have a connection with them, and that everything we do from this point on has a purpose to it. And you can see her movements are all very quick, which is pretty typical of a Paso. They're known for being a little more spirited or hot-blooded, however you want to say it, but like more energy, more moving their feet. I don't know if I've met a lazy Paso before. So we're going to basically test her with 3 different things. We're going to test her with, first of all, rhythmic motion. So she has to kind of read the difference between energy and intention. So anything can have energy, from a vehicle driving by you to the dogs barking, but your intention, see, like right now, if I give her this look, my intention is for her to move right there, okay? Versus if I stand upright like this, my intention is to be able to pet her with the flag. And you can see she's reading that as pressure. So this is the first kind of hole that we're seeing. There, she's giving it a try. So we'll go ahead and take it away. You don't want to take pressure away when they're escaping. You saw her kind of use her feet and try to escape that pressure. And you don't want to release it there. So I just kind of kept following her until she stood still and thought about accepting it. But right off the bat, she's not reading the energy versus intention very well. She's not super tuned into me and what I'm doing. And when you're riding a horse, you would like this statement to be true. You would like this statement to be true. If you're calm, the horse is calm. Now, unfortunately, they don't come out of the box that way. You have to train them to read your energy, read your intention, and decide the difference. So there could be other commotion happening, but if you're calm, then they can learn to be calm. And so that's so I'm calm right now, but the flag is being a little bit noisy as it moves around her. And so she's kind of learning to read that. And one of my goals when I'm evaluating kind of how trainable are they, it's like, I'm not gonna hold anything against them if they have a reaction to something, but depending on how long it takes them to get over it, and then how much change is there the next day, are kind of 2 factors that kind of lets me know kind of how trainable they are. And so this horse has had 4 months of training, and I know the program that she's been through, and this is a fairly significant reaction for that amount of time. So now we're going to switch it to a little bit of rhythmic pressure. So now I'm going to ask her to move from it. I'm just kind of wanting to see her responses to this. So I'm trying to ask her to walk with like a little partial disengagement. She's kind of got her ribs towards me. So I'm asking those to be pushed out away from me there. And she has a gaited horse, so you're going to see a little bit of her movement. It's a little unusual. Now, in the report that I've seen from her, it noted that she was a very claustrophobic feeling horse, and so I'm interested to put my rope on her and ask her to give to steady pressure and kind of see what her responses are to that. So you can see she kind of gets spooked by a lot of things, but she comes through it relatively quick and doesn't completely lose it. She stays present. You know, horses have different mental states, and she's been concerned about a few things, but I wouldn't say she's gotten to the point of feeling panicked or threatened about them. So this one obviously is bothering her a lot. And so I'm just gonna have her wear it here at first. All I'm trying to do is keep it above her hock so that it doesn't fall down. And then once they're comfortable wearing it, the next thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna put a feel on it and see if I can get her to stop. And I'm not pulling hard. I'm not trying to make her stop. There, and she gave to it there. So we call this soak time. While I think she's still processing what just happened, you want to give them plenty of time to just contemplate that and get relief for slowing down, and she gave to it. And one of the things I'm looking for to decide how trainable is she is like, what's her reaction now the second time? And you could see the difference there. The second time I put a feel, she wanted to stop almost instantly. And so to me, that's a pretty good sign that she's coachable. All right, so I wasn't sure if I was gonna saddle her or not, but she's kind of a curious combination. She's pretty flighty, she's pretty quick to move everywhere, but she gets over it pretty quickly. So there's some optimism there. And so I'd like to go ahead and saddle her today. But what I'm gonna do before I saddle her is I'm gonna put the laret rope around her barrel and use it kind of like a cinch. And this is basically colt starting, kind of a technique that we would use to kind of prepare them for the cinches. So we're not just putting the saddle on and hoping that they don't buck. We're kind of going to have an idea of what their responses are going to be. So I just want to put it around her. It's not a flank rope. That's not bad. I've seen worse. I mean, I'd like there to be no change. I'd like her to maintain her forward movement, but she's accepting that pretty well. Go ahead and, so we'll put a saddle on her. I don't know if she's been saddled or not. I would assume she has with that much time and training, but you never know. She doesn't seem like this is too new to her, but she kind of looks like she's gonna go bronking around. So we're just gonna let her hang out here with this for a second, let her breathe, and then I'm going to tighten everything up a little bit more so that there's no rolling of the saddle. That's one of the biggest mistakes I think you could make as a colt starter, is to not tighten it enough to where it rolls. You don't want to cut them in half with it, you know, and pull it up too tight. You can make any horse go to bucking and get them bound up. She does look like she's going to go. I don't want her facing me too much. And you know, you would think you want to let him stop here, but I want her to find relief in motion. So I like that. She's trying to think her way through it, trying to get comfortable there. But you can see her goosing at the cinches and stirrups. So you can see she's blowing out there. She's trying to get comfortable. She really wants to take a defensive posture very frequently. And so I'm doing what I call the 3-circle game here, of trying to ask her hind feet to go in a slightly larger circle than her front feet, and then my feet are on a circle. And what this does is it asks the horse to put a bend in their rib cage, which makes it hard for them to stay as tight and relax through her ribs. And if she can relax through her ribs, that's where she can start to accept that saddle a little better. There we go. Now you hear her blowing out, trying to relax. That's what creating that bend in the rib cage really induces, is getting them to blow out. When horses get claustrophobic feeling, they hold tension and then they breathe shallow. They hold tension in their ribs, they breathe shallow, and some horses will never release that tension. You've maybe heard horses going around making this noise while they're cantering. And they're taking really short, shallow breaths, and that's not a normal thing. They shouldn't be doing that. That's because they're holding tension while they're moving around. And so if I'm cantering a horse and I start to hear them do that, I try to retreat, bend them back down, ask them to bend through their ribs, get them taking full breaths, because that's a sign that they're more comfortable. But you can see it's like she's wearing a saddle, but she has that look of like, I'm trying to not let it touch her. But you can hear her blowing out, which a horse will only do if they're getting comfortable enough to a point. But just because she's getting relaxed doesn't mean she's not still a very sensitive horse. And so she just needs exposure in the right ways. But also, you can't take a very sensitive horse and turn them into a dull horse. This is a big misconception that's out there that I would like to clear up. A lot of people think enough training, you can change the horse's innate personality or disposition. You cannot. Horses have an innate personality and a disposition. You can only modify that up to about 20%. So what makes up a horse's kind of personality is their kind of innate disposition, kind of what they're born with, which means like a Paso here is going to be different than a Belgian or a Gypsy, you know, Gypsy Vanner horse or something like that. Same with Arabians and thoroughbreds compared to other breeds. Then it's their learned behavior. What have they learned in their experiences? Have they had a bad experience with something? Have they not? That sort of thing. I don't think this horse has had any bad experiences with things. I think she's just a very sensitive horse innately. Okay, so there's learned behavior. Then you factor in the environment. This horse has mostly been here. I think she's only been off the property one other time. So this horse is probably going to be affected. Any horse would be, but a sensitive horse that's only not had much experience. Like imagine if she was a yearling and somebody was hauling her around every weekend to go for a walk or something like that, like a lot of people do when they have a couple of horses and they spend a lot of time with them. They get more comfortable going to new places. But any horse is going to be affected by environment, especially one that's 7 years old and has only been off the property one time. So you got to factor that in. And then you factor in kind of their spirit level, which kind of sums up like how committed are they to whatever their behavior is. If their behavior is being dull and lazy, how committed are they to it? If their behavior is being more fractious and panicky and flighty, it's like, how committed are they to that? And so I would say she's a sensitive horse with like a medium to high spirit level. And that's kind of what I'm gathering from her. The bad news is she's going to be a handful for most people. So I'm going to test one more thing with her. I also, part of why I was standing there talking so much is I want to see how she moves off after standing still for a while. A lot of horses will kind of take off bucking again as if they just got saddled after standing around for a minute. Like, look at those little legs go. So she's like, again, oh, it's touching me. Now, if you're thinking during this video, oh, I wish Ryan would get on this horse and see if he can ride it. If you look at how she's handling with just accepting the saddle, it's not a really fair deal to add more pressure. We've hit the limit where she's feeling panicked enough to run around and buck like that. So she needs to accept that saddle before we continue. Otherwise, even if you could ride it, it's not a fair thing to go with it because that's going to be another layer of pressure, literally and figuratively, with handling the rider being, you know, human being up there, legs on both sides, pressure on the rein. Because when she's running around like that, we're not too picky about where they go when they're on line here, but we start getting more picky about it once we're riding. And so one of the steps that I like to do when I'm testing a horse out is I'll do some ground driving with them. And when you're ground driving a horse, you become much more aware of where your feet are and where they're going. And it's a good step if you're thinking the horse isn't quite ready to ride yet. It's a good step to kind of build in some of the control that very closely simulates what you would expect if you were sitting on them versus just circling them around. The rein is only on one side, pressure's only on one side. It's not a very direct simulation to what they would experience riding. So riding is a very different thing. Ground driving is one of the more closely related things. And you can see even just adding a stick and string of something touching her leg while she's moving around kind of ends up being excessive pressure for her. I don't know if I've seen a gaited horse that has bucked as much as she has. Most gaited horses get scared and kind of just run. But they're usually not that great at bucking in my experience. But let me know in the comments if you have a gaited horse that can buck as good as she can. So speaking of ground driving is actually every month on my Patreon page, we do a monthly challenge. And this month's challenge, I showed a couple different ways to ground drive your horse, one with 2 reins and one with only 1 rein. And so anybody that's a member on Patreon, all they have to do is submit a video showing them trying the ground driving sequence that I showed in the video, and they are automatically entered in a drawing. And then in the drawing for this month, we're giving away 2 of the driving lines. They come as a set that you can get from Quality Horseman. We'll leave a link in the description below, but that's where I get all my horsemanship tools from. So if you want to get entered in the giveaway, make sure you join the Patreon page. And if you're wondering how much is it, it's $10 a month for the kind of basic version. And you get access to all the videos. You can be in the giveaway. You get to do all that cool stuff. And it's a really good bang for your buck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an outside line that's over her head here. If I can get it there. And to me, she's a little more jumpy and flinchy now that the saddle's on. Now, I didn't bring my set of driving lines today. I just brought this one line. But this other rope is just a lariat rope that's, I think it's about 22 feet long. That's what we're kind of going with here today. So now I'm just going to put a little feel here. See if we can get her to do a turn. And we'd like her to do a smooth turn. You can see how bracy that was. So, you know, imagine she's this spooky with things moving around her on the sides of her. Imagine you put a human on top of her back. I'm sure she's going to get a little bothered by that. So for me, in my opinion, you know, we're a little ways away from riding this horse. She needs to get quite a bit more comfortable with these things, but I think she's going to be a long ways from looking real gentle before somebody gets on her. If I had to give you a timeline, it's really hard to say. I don't even want to give you one because I just don't know. She might surprise me or might end up taking a few months, you know. There we go. I like that. So again, I'm going to put a little feel on that outside line, do a turn. See, this is where we're asking her to put us in the other eye. See, there's a little bind. She's feeling a bind, a little panicky. That's that same feeling of feeling claustrophobic right there. And I'm going to keep this other line up. There we go. But you see how quick that switch is. Okay, now we're going to make it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to go ahead and put this, well, maybe not. It's even just flicking it around on her. But you can see how much exposure she needs, you know. So right now I just want her to wear that rope. Just get comfortable. When I say wear it, that means I just want her to get comfortable with it. I'm not asking her to yield for it. I just want her to get comfortable with things being around her. Now, my goal when I'm ground driving them is to eventually get to where I can be directly behind the horse. But you can see how uncomfortable she is in this position. Because to me, this simulates her seeing me, you know, above her or behind her if I was sitting on her. Don't have to worry about getting my 10,000 steps in today either. Ooh, that was better. You know, when we're working with a horse and we're kind of trying to decide if they're good to go on to the next stage or whatever, we're looking for like green lights, yellow lights, or red lights. And red lights are when the horse gets panicked and really thinks about leaving. Yellow lights is like they get a little concerned, but it doesn't end up getting down to their feet in a way that's maybe more than a few steps. You see them maybe brace up, tense up a little bit. So you can see her when she gets bothered, it gets, there we go. It gets down to the feet and she gets thinking. So those are all red lights, and those are telling us that we're kind of hitting her max capacity for accepting new things today. We don't need to throw anything new at her. Now I wanted to evaluate her so that I could give an accurate report here to the Florida Horse Protection, but that's kind of her max. So my overall assessment is she's definitely trainable. It would take a lot of time, a lot of work, because some horses, in my career, there's been about 3 horses out of thousands that I went, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze. Okay. And so it's like you could probably get them trained, but it's just not really worth it because those horses just really want to be wild. I would not put this horse on that list. I think she is very much trainable. But what a horse rescue has to factor in is their money and how much they can invest into one horse versus maybe other horses here that might be more trainable, and those just come down to decisions that have to be made. And so luckily I don't have to make that decision. I just get to kind of help point them in the right direction. So she is trainable, but I think she's very, very sensitive horse, and I think she's going to be a handful, and it's going to take an experienced owner for the rest of her life. That's kind of my assessment. And it's going to take quite a bit of time training before she'd get gentle and accepting enough of all these things to where, you know, she could be a safe riding horse. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you guys on the next one.